From Pittsburgh, PA, Mark asks, why does James Franklin continuously get dragged by internet trolls? Mark, I think you just answered your question. Why does he get dragged by internet trolls who say he is holding Penn State back despite the upward trajectory of the program? Jim Harbaugh fell under the same scrutiny 2 years ago. Mark, you just answered your question. 2 times you answered your question. Internet trolls is the answer for why anyone is getting dragged at any given point. And number 2, you said it better than I even was going to. You said Jim Harbaugh was dealing with the same thing a couple of years ago, so now he's not dealing with it anymore. No one's saying Jim Harbaugh can't beat Ohio State, because he has. No one is saying Harbaugh can't win the Big Ten, because he has. No one's saying he can't make the playoff, because he has. I guess there is a small little island of trolls that say, oh, Harbaugh sucks because he can't win a playoff game. And enjoy your island if you are amongst those trolls. But notice where the rest of them went, Mark. Do you see where the rest of them went? No, you don't see where they went because they disappeared. This is how a troll operates. Trolls are like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. They just move on to the next cause du jour. They move on to the next nonsensical talking point. They never have to answer for anything because their profile picture is some character from an animated movie. It's never their face. They never give you their real name. Again, this is the life of a troll. And in between eating the second and third plate of Hot Pockets that their mom walks down the stairs and gives them in the afternoon, this is what they do. And so with Harbaugh, they did it for a long time. None of them ever walked back to the table and said, I was wrong about Jim Harbaugh, because accuracy is really not at the forefront of their overall game plan, nor is it with James Franklin. So my take on James Franklin has been for a few years now, the same as my take was with Kirby Smart for a while. No, he hasn't won the national title. No, he hasn't done this or done that. In Kirby's case, it was, no, he hasn't beaten Nick Saban. No, they haven't beaten Alabama. That doesn't mean they can't. And people would come back at me and said, well, that's stupid. If they could beat him, they would have. That's not true. That's not true at all. If I have a .332 batting average, it means I'm capable of getting a base hit. If I happen to go 0 for 12 at some point in the season, are you going to come at me and say, oh, how about this? Here's a better example. If I'm a .332 lifetime hitter, but I start a season 0 for 12, therefore I haven't shown you any evidence technically that I'm going to get a hit that year, it would be stupid for you to say, you can't get a hit. If you were serious and not just being insulting, you can't get a hit. Well, yeah, I can. I just haven't. I mean, I've got a .332 lifetime average. Certainly I can get a hit. Well, with Kirby Smart, there were all kind of indicators around him to lead you to believe he was always capable of building to where they are now, but until he had, it was like he never could. Well, James Franklin hadn't made a playoff game yet. And so that means he can't, right? No, it just means he hasn't. Harbaugh, same way for a long time. He can't do this. He can't do that. It was never can't with him. It was always hasn't. If you've got even a 5% chance of doing something, that doesn't mean you can't. It just means you haven't. It may be unlikely, but it just means you haven't. And with Franklin, I think he's got a lot better than 5% odds of doing some good things up there. Now, here's the other part. This year, they probably have as high an expectation level as they've had since the year after 2016 or going into 2016 even. They may not win it this year, even with those expectations, even with an over-under win total of 9.5. Remember, Michigan is still expected to finish better. Ohio State is still expected to finish better. If the odds were to just hold, we had a question earlier in the pod that was, what if Ohio State and Michigan play for the national title? Well, that would mean they're the 2 best teams in the country, right? So in theory, and this is unlikely to happen, but in theory, if Ohio State and Michigan were the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country this year, it's technically possible for Penn State to be the 3rd best team in the country, which means it would be the best season Franklin's had up there, and yet they don't make the playoff and they finish 10-2. Because technically, if you're the 3rd best team in the country and you play number 1 and number 2, you should lose to them. That's just what the book says. And if you lose to the 2 teams in your division, you don't even play for the Big Ten title. And that's one of the many reasons why you aren't always what your record says you are in college football. Because it would be kind of short-sighted to look at Penn State in that scenario and say, oh, they're just another 10-2 team. No, they're not. Louisville and Penn State could go 10-2 this year and be totally different teams. Because Louisville avoids Clemson. They avoid Florida State. They avoid North Carolina. They play pretty much every one of the bottom teams in terms of odds in the ACC this year. They could go 10-2 this year. Penn State could play the top 2 teams in the country and go 10-2 this year. Are those the same 10-2? I know there are going to be some holdouts out there that say, yeah, a win's a win, a loss is a loss. It's just not. I don't know what else to tell you. If you're trying to define caliber of team, it's just not the same. That's not the way you should live your life.